The esports ecosystem is, it's also like heavily fragmented. There's really no centralized platform to coordinate and facilitate, online activities and, operations and player engagement and monetization and so forth.
Welcome to The Feedback Loop, a Sino Global Capital podcast where we keep you in the loop about the most pressing issues in Web3 today. I'm your host, Mona Hamdy, a Harvard teaching fellow with 20 years of experience in nonprofit and sustainable development. I started using emerging technologies 15 years ago, working with remote peoples to create new economies based on the reversal of climate change. And today, I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Sino, where I hope to bring beneficial technologies to the most forgotten corners of this planet. On today's episode, I'm extremely excited to be joined by Robel Efrem. He's the founder and CEO of Challengermode. Challengermode is an esports platform that gets gamers and esports aficionados together to meet and compete on the biggest platforms around the world. For Challengermode, Robel was the founder of Intellectus AB. He is an alum of Stockholm University, where he studied computer science and poli-sci. He founded his first business before he even graduated, serial entrepreneur. And he's been working on Challengermode for probably longer than most people have been in crypto. Launched a new mobile app just last week, and I'm excited to have Robel on to tell us all about the future of gaming and Web3. Hey, Robel.
Hey, Mona.
All right. So serial entrepreneur from Stockholm University starts an e-gaming platform that's catching on like wildfire and is pivoting into Web3. How did you get here?
I had another company before starting Challengermode called Intellectus. It was a digital content platform for edtech. We basically built the technology to stream lectures in a very automated way. Did that for about 4 years until it got acquired. It was a very interesting journey, but it was also like very, very boring. To be in those meetings with different universities, and that's another story. But I played a lot of computer games during my entrepreneurial trip. I came to a point where I realized I've probably spent thousands of hours playing a game called League of Legends. Eventually came to a point where I realized I spent thousands of hours, of what I saw as training, right? And I wanted to find a sort of accessible way for me to convert those thousands of hours of what I saw as training into something more tangible.
So I need to ask you about your League character and about your main and your obsession there. And I just want to make sure that everyone understands that like League of Legends and World of Warcraft are like two big, huge catalysts for most innovation I think that we're going to see for the next like 50 years. So
absolutely. So do you play the game yourself?
I mean, I'm not, it's like math and golf. I would never say that I'm good at it, because if you say that you're good, someone will just come and wipe the floor with you. Like they'll just trash you. So I'm familiar with the game, but I would never say that like you with your 1,000 of hours, like we could go toe to toe. I'd die on that hill.
I'm a bit of a strange one. There's like, 100 champions you can choose from. And, most people usually have a few that they rotate, but I've basically only played one champion, and that's Fiddlesticks. And I'm pretty good at, playing that character, anywhere on the map. That usually pisses my teammates off because it's not so compatible with the rest of the team compositions.
When did you decide that Fiddlesticks was your main? I've never heard anybody claim that, I think, actually.
Yeah, it's basically a scarecrow, right? So he looks funny, he walks funny. I went up against him, one game, and I just saw that character like dominate the game, and it was something beautiful, and I wanted it to become that good. For you to become really good at something, you usually need to spend a lot of time.
All right, so take me from Fiddlesticks to Challengermode, because by that point you had, to your point about streaming lectures, that's probably a little bit uptight, and then you get into gaming, and then you turn it into a career. So and you're young at that point, right? I mean, you started as you were really just finding your way through university. So
participating, in esports competitions, it has historically required, multiple convoluted steps, lots of patience and know-how. That's been like the main reason for why, the majority of the, 3.1, billion gamers have been unable to participate in esports tournaments and competitions. The esports ecosystem is, it's also like heavily fragmented. There's really no centralized platform to coordinate and facilitate, online activities and, operations and player engagement and monetization and so forth. The idea with Challenge Mode was sort of to address sort of these issues with basically in three main ways. So first way was to sort of, by giving gamers a final and sort of clear answer to the question, where can I go if I want to compete in the national championship in League of Legends or a world championship in FIFA? The answer, should be Challenge Mode, regardless of who's organizing the competition. The second way would be, by, offering, the necessary engagement and monetization tools for game developers and tournament organizers to create a sustainable business model around esports. The third way, which I think is sort of like the most important, make esports much more accessible, to participate in through the introduction of sort of new in-game technology and automation.
It's interesting to see e-gaming as is something that's not really new. For example, in the Middle East, in the Arab world, it's not new, but it is definitely something that is newly being supported at very senior levels of government, and policy. Even we have competitions on many different platforms and many different layers of engagement that are sort of sweeping through the region, and it's really forced us to have conversations about how top heavy the industry is. Where revenue is typically generated from, how it's quite similar and quite different to maybe other sort of established tournaments and gatherings that we might have. So what do you think about, I guess, trends in esports and how and challenges? Like where is this going? I hear how Challenger Mode, sort of fits that from the gamer perspective. What's the state of the gaming industry or the esports section of the gaming industry as a whole today? I mean,
it is sort of top heavy, right? So like most people, when they talk about esports, almost unknowingly, they're discussing the top 400 teams, right? Like I believe the top 400 teams, in the esports industry is sort of making more money on esports than the rest of the billion players, behind them. That does not make sense, right? Esports needs to become accessible to everyone. It needs to be almost, democratized. But it's sort of hard for it to become that, without the introduction of new technology. And as soon as you introduce new technology, you'll sort of see different types of sort of non-endemics, being able to play in that field. It's like for a very long time, you've essentially needed to become a tech company, to organize anything within esports, and that just not like it does not make sense. And very similar to how when Twitch sort of appeared, by sort of building the tools needed for content creators to create a sustainable business model around content creation. You saw someone like PewDiePie being born, or Ninja, and we believe, or we're already seeing sort of a similar trajectory for esports and competitive gaming in general.
It's interesting that you mention Twitch, because I was, when I was getting ready to talk to you about Challenger Mode, I think I was astounded by the fact that we're talking about $150 billion industry, and you hear these sort of maybe disconnects between this really hungry community and they're platform agnostic, not those 400 teams that you mentioned, and really everywhere. This is the universal language that doesn't require us to be culturally identified. It doesn't require us to have any sort of common language other than that game. And yet, one of the resounding sort of feedback that we got was also that we see a lot of complaint about what's happening on the other side. Steam, with the lack of titles and the lack of sort of games that play within or fit within your niche or your platform. What do you think is the future of maybe bringing these two together?
We're seeing sort of non-traditional game titles reaching out to us with the ambition of sort of adding this competitive layer to their game. One example is chess, right? So it's not typically viewed as an esports title, but it's on our platform now. We signed the second biggest chess platform in the world. Now people are able, like anyone is able to compete in, really cool chess tournaments. You'll basically soon be able to compete in very casual game titles on our platform. Your left sidebar should be, completely customized to, what games you're into.
It reminds me of sort of early YouTube adoption when people went from sort of consuming video content to actually creating video content. We take it for granted now that we have this very interactive space of, social media and influencers. I think that it almost seems like what you're talking about is the esports version of that.
Yeah, that is correct. I mean, we sort of view the tournament organizers, which in some case, may be the game developers themselves, but we sort of view them as content creators because they're basically creating, cool content in the form of competitions. Through those competitions, they're sort of engaging their community on our platform. The better tools we can provide them to sort of entertain and engage their community, the more vibrant that community will be.
That's profound when you think of it in terms of tournament creators as basically the masters of the world and the masters of this sort of physical gathering or this community, right? How come this hasn't happened before?
It's a hard technical feat, right? To build a platform that is sort of working across platforms, across games, preferably in an automated way, right? That sort of requires infrastructure to be available both from the game developer side, but also from the platform side, right? In our case, a lot of game developers have just had a hard time building that infrastructure because they've sort of they know esports is, but what's interesting now is that our two top game developer partners are now, starting to see the LTV, the lifetime value of players that they've converted from casual players to competitive players go up by 4 to 7 times. So on average, as soon as they've converted a casual gamer into a competitive player, they're able to make 4 to 7 times more in an increased LTV. That was a really good wake up call.
Yeah, sounds good for Challenger mode. I mean, that's just sort of that's the low hanging fruit, right? That's not even the stuff that you're aiming for. That was just picking up what was there. Why didn't I think of that? I should put 10,000 hours into League, I guess. So of course, being Sino and being crypto native, when you talk about technology that makes things interoperable and universal, I can't help but think about the esports pivot into Web3. What's that?
Yeah.
What's that looking like?
We've so far only worked with sort of Web2, I guess you would call it that, like Web2 game developers. What we've sort of started to realize is that there's just been a sort of growing number of Web3 game developers that have sort of started to reach out to us, be a part of the value offering that we're offering to regular game developers. We're definitely moving into that direction now in a not too distant future. Make it possible. It's sort of like a three-step plan, but I think I'm able to disclose the first step, which is to allow both game developers and tournament organizers to denominate their prices in sort of Bitcoins or Ethereums or NFTs. We simply just want to provide the game developers and tournament organizers with the toolbox, right, to create a sustainable business model for their game in esports.
That's a really interesting thesis because I think that's like bringing, we hear a lot about people talking about bringing Web2 into Web3 kind of stuff. So you're sort of evolving or morphing into this sort of new space. But what you're talking about is just bringing some of the functionality around, facilitation, around payments, around maybe some interoperability of character assets or something into traditional gaming. And what's interesting to me about that is that it seems like that makes it more fun. I mean, games are fun. There's a reason that people play them all over the world is because they're fun. And one of the moats that Web2 games have over Web3 games is that Web3 games are not fun to play, right? So we seem to always just want to be solving for that. I'm part of a team that I have a bunch of gaming obsessed colleagues, and that's like their that's the big iron throne of litmus tests is like, well, is this fun to play? What are you guys seeing when you're talking about these sort of games that are cropping up or these casual games that are being curated around the world? What are they looking like?
There's definitely potential there. I don't think we've launched a Web3 game as of yet, but there's a few of them in the pipeline. We're in the early days. There's definitely a lot of potential. I mean, they are regular games, right? But they're built using a different technology. The sort of core concept is the same. Like, you're supposed to have fun playing them. It sort of goes in line with everything else that we're doing.
Well, that's awesome. What do you, the inverse side of that, I guess, around Web3 games are some of the criticisms around what the space tends to do with Web3 games. What do you think are those things that you hope these games sort of avoid in the space? I mean, I'm thinking here, of course, about token economics issues and stuff like that.
I mean, they're like, good apples and bad apples. I think, it's a lot like, in the early days of the internet, where there were, a lot of companies, websites and initiatives that sort of, failed. They were overhyped, in some cases, even kind of scammy. But the sort of, the internet, and the sort of underlying, protocols, the basis of them were sort of sound, and they enabled like a lot of really good businesses pop up. A lot of them, still exist today. So even, the one that sort of failed paved the way for future successes. And you can sort of draw similar analogies with other technologies, from earlier decades and centuries. I think that, with sort of blockchain tech and Web3 in general, we're going through, sort of same sort of thing. But at the end of the day, as we've talked about, it sort of comes down to providing, real value and utility in a sustainable way. And there is sort of a lot of companies out there and projects that are doing that already. I'd like to consider, Challengermode as, one of them, but we'll definitely, see more of them in the future. Around
the space, writ large, what do you think are some of the misconceptions around esports and around gaming? Like, one of mine was that I was shocked that Swedes game. You guys rage?
We're actually really good at playing games, and we have a lot of Swedish gaming companies. Mojang, the creators of Minecraft. King, creators of Candy Crush. Dice, they're literally three floors above us. I really think one of the main reasons for this is that the winters here are just brutal, and it's so dark, and there's really nothing else to do for sort of half of the year than just to go to work and be productive, or sit in your basement and be creative.
I was being lighthearted about it, but true story. My very first time that I went to Stockholm, it was like summer, which meant that it was like warm for everyone who was from Stockholm, but it was like 60 degrees for me. And we ended up at like a rave under a freeway playing video games, like playing super old Nintendo games on the side of the bridge. So that was my first inkling into the fact that like Swedes do definitely go hard. They go hard at partying, they go hard at summer, and they definitely go hard at games. What is the most exciting part about having a gaming startup that's about to take on the world?
It's very exciting to actually shape something as big as the esports industry or the competitive gaming business in the way that we're doing. We're working with many of the biggest companies in the world, right? I mean, EA Games, Riot Games, Epic Games, Ubisoft, Krafton, Tencent. It's a pure delight to sort of just work with them and provide value to players that love what we're doing.
Are you still playing? What do you play? What do you play, Robel?
Yeah, I mean, so it's League. That's definitely number one, and then it's like a really big step down. But then as number two, you'll probably find a game like GTA. I play FIFA and NBA 2K, but I'm too competitive.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, do your friends like playing with you, or you?
If it's not like a sports game, I would say yes.
But if it is, they're like, nah, man, get them back on fiddlesticks.
Yeah.
Who would be your dream person to play with or play against?
I'd love to play against Elon Musk. I've worked so hard to sort of make that happen. Harder said than done. We're launching a game on the platform quite soon. I believe it's one of his favorite games, and I've been sort of begging the game creator sort of let me play in a game with them, but it's just hasn't happened yet.
I know that we're going to get to see it happen. I think that we're going to help make this come about. I can't wait. I want to come to Sweden. I think that we should we should have a tournament and we should make this happen. We're going to make that happen. So we will see Elon in Challengermode and Robel Efrem, founder of Challengermode, kicking the trash out of each other. I want to ask the game, but I don't think that we want to. Do we want to say? Can we say or no?
It's a game called Polytopia. He usually tweets about it a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right.
So that I played a lot, but that's a mobile game.
So there you go. Polytopia, Challengermode, Elon and Robel. Oh my God. I learned a lot talking with you, Robel. I can't wait to see where this goes. I'm going to have to pick up my game. I think I'm going to have to start like spreading my wings a little bit here. So I'm going to rely on you for some tips. All right. I can't wait. I'm going to be a chess creator. I can start there and then work my way out. So thank you so much for spending the time with me today, Robel.
My pleasure, Mona. Thanks.
Our time is up for now, but the conversation is still going. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Sino Global Cap, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and leave us your feedback so we can loop it into upcoming episodes.